This is Italy. In a word, hardy. Brood rounding out the southern half of the European continent, it is a land of beauty, carved from centuries of bloodshed and ambition. Fractured, incoherent, and at war with itself, this nation would at last be forged on the violent tides of the Mediterranean and the whipping winds of the Dolomites, through the efforts of the most dedicated of citizens, a nation instrumental to the telling of modern world history.
March 31st, 1814. Millions lay dead on the battlefields of Europe. Tsar Alexander stood in Paris. Within a week, Emperor Napoleon I was forced to abdicate. Upon the great powers of Europe was placed the burden that would define the next century. They were charged with creating a system that would avert further carnage of the scale that came with the dawn of the 19th century. Thus was born the Concert of Europe. August 2nd, 1914. Germany invaded Luxembourg. 4 years later, tens of millions lay dead on the battlefields of Europe. Why did this happen? Unification fundamentally altered the balance of power arranged in 1815. The continent now had to contend with two new powers. Chief was the German Empire. Akin but less remembered was Italy, paragon of the trends that felled the empires of old and brought the world anew. Emissaries of the age to come, these twin unifications were the instruments that ultimately derailed the Concert of Europe.
Through decades of revolution, reaction, and reform, Italy's unification molded it from a myriad of disjointed realms into a cohesive national identity, thereby reshaping Europe's reactionary order into a new system of nation-states and shaking long-standing political foundations via nationalism.
The mid-19th century Italian peninsula was conducive to revolution. Following the Napoleonic Wars, Austrian Foreign Minister Clemens von Metternich had ensured its domination squarely under the Habsburg crown. But folly was this seizure. Thenceforth in Italy, Austrian power waned, sparks of nationalism flared, and the concept of nation-states took hold. Italians combated Austrian hegemony with a secret nationalist society, the Carbonari. The Habsburgs sought to quench the flames of nationalistic insurrection by force. In the words of Metternich, Italy is a mere geographical expression, but repression only deepened resolve. In 1848, the tide of liberal revolutions flooded Europe, further weakening the antiquated Austrian Empire and igniting a nationalist fervor. All of Europe was caught ablaze.
This was Italy's chance for unification. When news of revolution in Vienna spread, the city of Milan rose at once, its citizens battling Austrian Field Marshal Joseph Radetsky's troops in Lombardy, driving them out for 5 days. This sparked the First Italian War of Independence. Led by Daniele Manin, the people of Venice seized independence from Austria and endured for 16 months in the newly declared Republic of San Marco, but the sheer weight of empire rendered them starved and extirpated. Synchronously in Rome, liberal forces and Republicans led by idealist Giuseppe Mazzini and revolutionary Giuseppe Garibaldi overthrew Catholic rule in the Papal States, ensuring religious freedom for all and standing at the gates of Rome for several months before being overtaken by French troops in loyal defense of Pope Pius IX. While republics fell across Italy, House Savoy's Charles Albert of Piedmont Sardinia marched for unity. Victors at Giotto and Bresciata greeted him, but when the dust settled, Austrian discipline under Radetzky turned the tide. Albert was forced to abdicate to his son Victor Emmanuel II in light of his defeat at Novara. The flames of unification burned bright, but they were quickly doused by imperial power and church authority. One thing was certain, however: the people were willing to rise up in the face of perceived injustice and would not be quelled by short-term reactions by the traditional holders of power. Unity would demand cunning as well as courage, reform as well as revolt.
A new figure rose out of the embers of defeat, Count Camillo di Cavour of Piedmont, Sardinia. Where Mazzini dreamed and Garibaldi fought, Cavour calculated. Appointed prime minister in 1852, Cavour revolutionized Piedmont through pragmatic reform. He expanded industry, built railways, modernized fiscal policies, reformed the army, and curtailed clerical privilege, forging a constitutional monarchy capable of leading the peninsula. The looming threat of the Austrian Empire was still evident, however, with Venetia and Lombardy still under its control. Forby, the papacy under French protection stood unyielding in the center of the peninsula. Piedmont needed what the Republic of San Marco did not have: allies. Opportunity came in the Crimean War. Cavour set Piedmontese troops to fight alongside Britain in France, thereby ensuring a seat at the table of European diplomacy. At the Congress of Paris in 1856, he raised the Italian question before Europe's great powers, exposing Austrian tyranny to international scrutiny. Napoleon III of France, seeing advantage in Austria's weakness, struck a deal with Cavour. War erupted in 1859 when Piedmont Sardinia refused to heed an Austrian ultimatum to demobilize at once. The Franco-Piedmontese army took Milan and marched further east to vanquish Austria before Prussia could get involved. At Magenta and Solferino, Franco-Piedmontese forces clashed with Austrian armies in battles of staggering carnage. The fields were left strewn with the dead and the dying, soldiers and civilians alike. Their suffering was witnessed by a Swiss observer, Henry Dunant. Out of the blood-soaked plains would rise the International Red Cross, and with it, the First Geneva Convention. International humanitarian reform would come out of the suffering.
The gains made by Franco-Piedmontese troops were astounding, but deep within Napoleon III's mind was fear. Fear of a powerful Savoyard state, France's southern border. As such, he soon signed a premature peace, leaving Venetia under Austrian rule, but leading to the cession of Lombardy to France, which promptly transferred the territory to Piedmont Sardinia. The Via France armistice greatly outraged Napoleon's Sardinian allies, and Cavour resigned in protest. In any case, it was clear that where the revolutions of 1848 had failed through passion, the reforms of Cavour succeeded through purpose, entwining the cause of liberty with the art of statecraft. Piedmont Sardinia ultimately emerged victorious from the Second War of Independence. Now, however, unification was once again in the hands of the soldier instead of the statesman. In the south, Giuseppe Garibaldi, furious about the cession of his homeland of Nice to France, launched his audacious expedition of the Thousand. In 1860, barely 1,000 registered volunteers, he sailed from Genoa to Sicily, stirring up rebellion against Bourbon rule in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Within weeks, Garibaldi's courage and charisma toppled the kingdom, his victories at Calatafimi and Palermo driving the monarchs from their thrones. As his army advanced northward, it threatened to outpace Cavour's careful diplomacy, forcing the statesman and the soldier to converge upon a single goal. In a symbolic meeting at Tiana, Garibaldi clasped Victor Emmanuel's hand and hailed him King of Italy. The dream of unity was real, tangible, and marching beneath a single flag. Revolution and reform had finally met in the face of reaction, and for the first time in centuries, Italy stood on the verge of becoming whole once again.
The North and South were joined through the Second War, but Venetia and Rome remained apart, one under Austrian rule and the other under papal protection and French arms. The Kingdom of Italy, proclaimed in 1861, was a nation still divided against itself. Cavour would not live to see its completion, dying the very year of unification. His death left Italy's destiny in the hands of monarchs and generals. In 1866, a final opportunity arose. Prussia declared war upon Austria, and Italy, bound by alliance and fueled by a desire to unify once and for all, entered the conflict. Garibaldi struck in the Alps. The navy clashed disastrously at Lissa, but when Prussia triumphed at Königgrätz, Venetia was seceded to Italy. One more fragment had fallen into place. One destination remained, the Eternal City, Rome. King Victor Emmanuel II issued Pope Pius IX an ultimatum, offering the Pope retention of his prerogatives under the Italian crown. The incensed Pope refused, so when the Franco-Prussian War in 1870 drew Napoleon III's troops from Rome, Italian forces marched through the Aurelian Walls, placing Rome under siege. Eventually, a swift bombardment and a white flag over Porta Pia entailed that after more than a millennium, Rome was Italian once again. The peninsula was finally whole.
Despite itself, unity bred contradiction. The North surged with industry, whereas the South languished in poverty. Political corruption and disillusionment eroded the idealism of Manzini and Garibaldi. The papacy withdrew into self-imposed isolation. The church and state glared across the Tiber in mutual suspicion. Bitterness about estranged plans plagued Italian society, and in 1915, Italy entered the Great War alongside the Entente on promises of said lands, despite its participation in the Triple Alliance. In the Treaty of Lund, Italy betrayed its German and Austrian allies in exchange for its desired territory, Trieste and Dalmatia. The war ended in a victory and a seat at the League of Nations, but many remained dissatisfied with broken promises. Out of disappointment and unrest was born a darker unity. Benito Mussolini and his concept of fascismo intended to finish the Risorgimento by forging a new Roman Empire. The fascists cast a looming shadow over Italy's legacy, enabling reforms such as the crackdown on southern crime, while simultaneously perpetrating atrocities in the name of a new Roman Empire. In this manner, the Italian dream was realized, yet mutilated. The idealistic revolutions, pragmatic reforms, and frightening reactions all weaved together to redefine the European order for good and for bad. And Italy, like Europe itself, would spend the next century breaking and remaking the dream of unity.
This is Italy, in a word, hardy. The boot that once stood fractured now stands firm, carved not only by centuries of bloodshed and ambition, but by the unyielding will to endure. From the violent tides of the Mediterranean to the whipping winds of the Dolomites, a nation that once bled for unity now beats with one heart, a nation instrumental to the telling of world history.